everybody, and welcome to SA Rugby Magazine. I got Scott Gibbs with me. I don't know where Z is. I think maybe after the beating he took between us. I thought it was quite fun-natured ribbing, but nowhere to be seen.
Well, they've lost interest now that we didn't have that third decider against Ireland. So,
well, I think that that would have been a spectacle this weekend. And
it would have, and as much as we can't control that, the scheduling, it would have just teed it up slightly in the context of 1 and 2 in the world.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at what's ahead, the next 6 games for the Springboks, the outing against Portugal was probably the game that they kind of needed to see a couple more shapes, to understand their depth a little bit better as they prepare for Australia.
Yeah, for sure. And looking at Australia's results, they weren't convincing against Wales. They certainly weren't convincing against Georgia. So I'd say the stakes are getting higher for South Africa to make sure that they don't be the victim again when they go to Australia, because they don't do well there, but they should put away
They
Australia.
should. And whether this is a malaise or whether there's some creature comforts when you get to the Gold Coast or when you're in Sydney or on the West Coast in Perth. Yeah. The fact is that they've underperformed. Yeah. They really have underperformed given the context of the type of squads that they've taken there. So Joe Smith now is 3 from 3, and his start, as an Australian, is starting to feel his way. You can see that his thumbprint is all over that squad. But they're going to come up, obviously, against a much more physical, brutal outfit in the Springboks. So it's incumbent on them now to look exactly where they feel that they can keep the ball away or play in certain areas that can minimize the potential damage that the Boks can. Because if they get a stranglehold on the game, for sure, then they'll want to assert their dominance at the top of the world rankings by just putting together two weekends of great football. Yeah, and
I think that Australia certainly, and any team playing the Boks now, the world champions, Rugby World Cup champions, certainly elevate their game. And you always tend to play to the quality.
And there's no bigger challenge. I think history tells us there's no bigger challenge than playing the Springboks, whether you play them here, which is incredibly tough. Yeah. But the hallmark of any great side is how you perform away from home, and that's the next challenge for Rassie, is the focus and the focus. Really drilling down on the minutiae of where we can assert our dominance and where we can be better at game management, where we can continue to improve our development as an offensive side. But I think the stakes have to go up defensively, because notwithstanding last weekend's performance, Kev, against Portugal, if you look at the last 6 games going back to the quarterfinals, that they've scored 10 tries, conceded 9. Now that really
before
isn't
that game,
that's not really a great statistic or a reflection on being number 1 in the world.
No.
So I think there's an onus more on the defensive orientation, which is principally about chatter, but putting the right pieces together, because I think who knows what the weather's going to be like in Brisbane and or Perth, and the fact is you have to play the conditions, as we know, but you have to be smart when you go away from home. For
sure, and with the injuries that the Boks have, they'd be relying on that depth that we believe that they have.
Well, I think depth is a great question, isn't it? And we know that there's there's a litany of like the production facility in South Africa that I continue to talk about. But it's isolating all of those silos, and there's depths in so many positions now, which is a great advantage for someone like Rassie and his management team, but also comes with the challenge of the paradox of choice. You've got so much choice in certain positions, so it's about understanding what is your best starting 15, and also the implementation of the bomb squad needs to be again amplified, elevated again, because they have to make a statement when they come on the field.
And
I think teams are getting a little bit cuter as to how they work that.
Well, we'll see how that plays out. But let's get into the Portugal game. Obviously, the big talking point is the red card.
Yeah, well, you listen. You and I were both watched the game, and as that happened, I mean, I caught it out of the corner of my eye because there were various TVs in the cricket club where we watched it. And certainly Esterhuizen, textbook tackle, caught him on the forearm. It didn't slide up into a region that could cause any concern. But I mean, it was a big fella on a small fella, and was hit with force and velocity.
So the impact made it look a lot worse.
I think so, yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Because I failed to see a kind of repeat where there was potentially a glancing blow head on head. And I was interrupted only on the basis that I introduced myself to former Springbok Peter Whip, who played for the Springboks against the Lions in '74. So I was never going to give up that opportunity to introduce myself.
No, you were. Yeah, you're excited about that.
Super excited. But the fact is, it probably, despite that, and despite it being put on report and then elevated to a red card, it didn't diffuse the energy in the game, and probably demonstrated the reason why Portugal, ranked 15 in the world, played more like a top 6 team than they did their current World Rugby rankings.
Yeah.
So that's what made it such a compelling game, even for the neutrals.
I suppose that it's kind of fortunate that it happened against a team like Portugal and not a team like the All Blacks, where the stakes are much higher. And that's my issue with it is, even Rick Mahler came out and said it's ridiculous.
Rick Mahler.
Is it Rick? What's his name?
Rick Mahler.
Is it Rick Mahler? Is it what's his name?
Joe Mahler.
Rick Joe.
Are you? I thought you were thinking.
There's a movie.
Rick Mahler, folks.
Joe
I'm
Mahler.
sure you're going to love that one. Yeah.
Sorry, Joe.
Joe Mahler.
Sorry, Joe.
Sorry, Joe. Yeah.
He on Twitter he came out and said it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and listen, he's got every right. I mean, Esterhuizen, a former teammate, knows exactly who Big Andre is.
Yeah.
Not a dirty player, but incredibly physical.
Yeah.
And that was as textbook as you got it. You could feel that. It kind of thumped out of the TV, doesn't it?
Well, when you think back to the Farrell incident, where Farrell tackled him and didn't get penalised, you remember that a few years ago?
Yeah.
So, to me, how the confusing thing to me is how it gets elevated to a red card, which means that they've had time to analyse it. I've seen it enough times. I've seen it lots of times. The tackle, as the South African public has. I don't even think it was a penalty. I just think it was one ferocious tackle.
Yeah.
And play
in
on.
the early exchanges of a game.
Yeah.
And this was not. This wasn't just he caught him well. The fact is that the pass was kind of laboured.
Yeah.
And
or
he just
hospital, as we would call it.
Yeah, as you say, and Andre took off like a bullet out of a gun, and hit him ferociously. I mean, that's what happens when a guy 6'4", 18 stone comes at you and hits you plumb square. That's
Squambob.
Squambob, as I said.
No, it was. Again, if I just don't understand how those mistakes stay in the game, because it clearly wasn't a red card. I don't, but I got a sense that because it was Portugal, there was a bit of can even this game up a little bit. That's conspiracy theories.
Yeah. Well, we won't go down that rabbit hole, but yeah, I think
that's where I need Zellum.
Yeah, you need Zellum, and you need someone who's analyzed the slow-mos, etc. Because it's really hard when you kind of watch it in a retail environment rather than the comfort of your home, where you can listen to what the TMO is thinking and engaging with the assistant referees and the referee on the day, so you get a better feel for it.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a harsh for Andre Esterhuizen, because I think he did nothing wrong in that situation. The fact is he's been denied another opportunity and get massive game time, just to shape maybe Rassi's thinking as he looks towards the midfield depth throughout the Rugby Championship.
No, and especially a man so physically imposing, you can't help but wonder what he would have contributed to that game.
No, and you can't dial that down. That's where you get everybody right on the threshold.
Yeah. So, What would the narrative? I mean, Rassi was putting out quite a hard narrative about anybody that doesn't play well and can prove that they're not test ready.
Yeah.
Quite a statement he was saying, which tended to up the heat of the game for Bok players.
Well, listen, when that happens, and certainly in a critical position like first centre, is that amplification now, the responsibility of the not only the shared workload, but the extra burden fell on Lacanio M. You know, and actually, you know, for someone who has been, quote unquote, you know, struggled with injuries, you know, he fitted back into that position like a glove, didn't he? I mean, I thought he had a super game in taking on the burden of, you know, dominating the midfield in defence to some degree, but more so in attack and how he kind of interweaved with his outside backs.
Yeah. You know, the bookies had picked the Boks by 37.5 points. So with 14 men for 78 minutes of the game and 13 men for 10 minutes from the 36th minute, I think, on, the Boks covered the spread and beat them by 44 points.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what it would have been if there had been no red card incident. Because right after the 36th minute, Portugal went right up the middle. There was nobody there and scored that wonderful try. And not taking anything away from Portugal. Well done to them.
Well, Portugal scored three super tries. The first one was opportunistic, and I don't think any other team and player. I'm thinking of someone like Ange Capuzzo from Italy that could have just been reactive in sweeping up the ball and putting that little bird ball through, and then it bounced into Santos, the winger, who outstripped everybody else.
Yeah.
I suppose the worrying thing for me is that the Portugal did really well in that 15 5-metre channel where they isolated the Bok defence and they created separation time after time. You know, they beat defenders time after time. They capitalised on that and scored, you know, a beautiful another 2 tries in that period. So I think it was a win-win for both sides. Really was a win-win. You know,
Yeah.
Bloemfontein shone again, another full house. Another, you know, they created the theatre just before kick-off. Another sterling broadcast by SuperSport and its team. You know, they are set in the bar. I think, you know, globally when it comes to the positioning of these tests. So it was a win-win, absolutely.
Yeah, especially for, I mean...
And I'll say this, Kev.
Yeah.
You know,
the try.
whether by design or default, Simon Mannix, the way that he coached the Portuguese team, I think was exactly how Joe Schmidt will look to exploit weaknesses on the perimeter, and that's where Ireland, that's where the Boks have been slightly sloppy of late, and if you look at where Ireland penetrated them in the first game in Pretoria and the second game in Durban, Conor Murray scored right under the sticks by some intricate playing off the ruck and that. All of that, Kev, that was the genesis of Joe Smith's coaching philosophy so this is something that they've adopted and carried forward and developed. So I think there was a lot for Joe Smith to digest and understand.
Yeah.
If this is the way that, you know, and identify in a way that we can focus on, we give us a really good focus on how we prepare for the Springboks. But for me, the Boks have to shore up. They get in, they need to be more thrifty when it comes to the D and their application to it.
So if you put yourself in Rassi's shoes for a moment, do you think there's anybody that played themselves out of Test rugby on Saturday, and what would he take out of that game?
Interesting question, and interesting. You know, a lot of talent on show, and it's difficult in those situations because you still have to play as part of a team. You can't really go out and be a soloist because you're not doing your kind of brand any good.
Yeah.
I think the fact is that we learned more from who Sasha Montgomery-Zello, Sasha Feinberg-Montgomery-Zello, SFM, can we call him that?
Yeah.
I think, cut.
Let's call him Sasha.
Yeah, I think we clearly understand the enormous potential that Sasha has.
Yeah.
And if you break down every element of his contribution and production in that game, everything was done with deliberateness, with an attack focused, sharp edge about him, and the fact is that
the stock's going up and up.
his brand and his stock's going up. We just need to, what is his best position? Because if he's going to start at fullback, I think that's great, because his counter-attacking visibility and balance, interspersed with his ability to accelerate, created this beautiful play for Mapipi's try. Absolutely. And that's exactly what you're going to need down in Australia, is a solid guy under the pump, but also the ability to be heads up, surveying, looking at where the numbers are. And I think he at the moment is just on fire.
So playing, I agree with you. Being Professor Gibbs for a second, what grade are you giving the Boks for Saturday's performance?
I think that was a solid B-. Notwithstanding the early disruption.
Yeah.
But the fact is that if you looked at the 23, you knew that this wasn't going to be the most cohesive of performances. Yet you knew that there would be a stubborn defense that you'd have to earn the right to break down, which I think they did mechanically and tactically, and also encouraged by the fact is that their territorial dominance was down to better decision making at halfback and from the back with their kicking game. So a lot of good takeaways.
Well, you've always been a hard taskmaster and a hard marker, so I would give them a B+, based on the way that the game unfolded with Esterhuizen, in terms of the guys having to support each other, down a player and down to 13 at one stage. I think all in all, probably a B+. Like you said earlier on, both teams won.
I know. I think maybe if I'm scoring it B-, but with a comment to improve. Again, I saw very lack of leadership. Clearly, Archis Neyman, led from the front and was dominant and
certainly worthy of man of the match.
Yeah, certainly, and and just underscores his overall ability to play football, not just because he's a big guy, with a Mohican. I'm a big fan of Kobus Reinach. I still think he needs to be part of your squad, not because of his utilitarian nature, because I think he's dominant in that position. He can be dominant at that 9 position. And I saw enough again on Saturday. Say, listen, he's probably underutilized and needs more opportunity. Yeah, he's a real threat.
I have to point out that there was one comment that on someone that really takes offense to you calling someone a footballer. So to that person, I just say, get a life.
Yeah. Well, no, it's what I mean by that is their football inability, because in rugby it's played by all sorts of shapes and sizes and so on, and you kind of need to have thumpers and fetchers, and you need to have skilled players and so on, so forth. I think the bouquet of it all at the moment, the way that it's kind of wafting, is that there is so much individual footballing talent. It just needs to be harnessed and packaged in the right way, and you need to some days turn up and go straight and hard for a long period of time, but you also need to have the ability to pivot at any one moment in time. And I think that's what Sasha gives the team, is a little bit more balance, because if the pass is not crisp, he has the ability to put the ball on the floor or go for the 50-20. So when someone's in empirical form like that, it just oozes with the confidence that permeates through the team. It really does, and certainly even more so if he's at the back, where he's your eyes and ears of your decision makers and halfbacks and that, telling them which way we should be going, because I can just see where they're lacking in defensive numbers.
So let's have a quick chat about where the rest of we talked on the weekend about the tiers of rugby and how the game gets grown. I'm not a big fan of Bill Beaumont in terms of what he's done growing the game. But you look at Australia, they beat Georgia by 11. Yeah, there was a red card in that game as well, I think in the 34th minute. You had, that's an 11-point spread. Unheard of for a team like Georgia to go out to Australia and only lose by 11 ever. You look at New Zealand saw Fiji. But Fiji lost to Portugal, as people have been quick to remind me. Where is the state of rugby in terms of that next tier, and how do we get it? I mean, you look at Fiji, for example. I would expect them joining the Super Rugby ranks to see some growth and solidification in their rugby ability. Where is World Rugby?
Well, I think it's top heavy at the moment, isn't it? You know, and I say that I thought the most pleasing part of the game in Bloemfontein on the weekend was the fact that Portugal played like a top 6, top 8 side rather than their kind of ranking of 15. But the fact is that Georgia have gone 2 places up in their ranking. Italy have gone up a place above Wales. And you just...
that was an impressive win for Italy.
Yeah, no, so 3 losses, you know, more woes for Eddie Jones, a 45-12, I think, win in Sapporo on the weekend. Just shows you the level of talent and coaching coherence. Again, is just being, it's just being delivered because
not good news. Not good news for Wales.
No, well, it's not. But also, I think there has to be some key takeaways from Wales. Is I'm not going to say quasi disappointing, but because they came under strength. The fact is they finished the tour with a flurry of better understanding and more kind of team spirit against Queensland Reds on Friday. Gatland has been able to see much more into the depth of his front five and players across the board. So I have no doubt by the autumn, by the November series, that Wales will be, a much, much better outfit. Better prepared, you have more weapons at hand, and again, going to be tested against the best in the world. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom for Wales, for sure. I mean, but the trouble is it just keeps revisiting itself, through whether it's the media or people who are just are looking at the glass half empty.
Yeah, we Welsh fans tend to get that.
Welsh fans tend to do that.
Yeah.
The global press seems to do that. But the fact is, there's enough talent there when fit and prepared to challenge the best in the world, and that's what the autumn will present to us going into the Six Nations for sure.
Okay, and as you're watching any of the rugby this weekend, changed your view on the championship? I mean, Argentina hammered Uruguay for 79-something, 6 or 5 or whatever it was.
Well, I think that the thing with Argentina is that you never know where they stand, because they always seem to be in a state of there's a transition from a coaching perspective or from a leadership perspective. We don't really give too much credence to their to the summer tours, because usually, as you say, in this instance, it's been an under-23s development squad from France, and then they go and play Uruguay again, who are not really, bedfellows for preparation for the Rugby Championship. But for sure they'll be turning up.
France were though.
Yeah. But I think first and foremost, from a Springboks perspective, you pay who's ahead of you, and that's the Wallabies. So that's all the focus will be now. The bigger picture, yes, of course, the All Blacks and how they ease their way or not into the Rugby Championship. But all focus now is on that first Test match.
Hottest ticket in rugby right now: Cape Town versus the All Blacks. There was 185,000 applicants for 15,000 tickets.
Yeah, massively oversubscribed.
Yeah,
I think this is an unprecedented position that Springbok Rugby has been in.
Yeah.
Now, is this down to a few factors? Notably, obviously, the ascension because of the back-to-back Rugby World Cup wins.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of hangover from those difficult days of pandemic when no crowds for internationals, for the British and Irish Lions. I just think people are rallying and turning out for the Springboks now, and rightly so.
Yeah, absolutely. And again,
because that's where you want to be. They're
the game appeals to
the top guy. They're top cats at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure. And the game's certainly appealing to a broader audience. And it's no accident that the more people it appeals to in this country, the deeper we get as a team.
For sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well,
and listen, it's not always about wins as well. I think it is. There's it's been a long, hard 18 months for a majority of the Springbok squad. Physically and the emotional highs during the playoff period, and of course the elation, what that must have felt for them, winning back-to-back World Cups. And also their participation during the regular season, and then getting back up with the expectation of being number one in the world against number two, and really contributing to a magnificent 2-test series against Ireland. So everybody is salivating about what the prospect of the Rugby Championship is, and then beyond is the Northern Hemisphere tour before international rugby for the Springboks goes dormant for 6 months.
Yeah.
So, there's still a lot at stake. And the hopes of the nation lie squarely on the shoulders of the results. Yeah. They do. And that's a beautiful thing.
Well, lots to look forward to. I appreciate you coming in and giving a bit of comment on that. And look forward to the next 6 games. Thanks very much, Scott.